Hello and welcome to the fourth edition of the Lexolent podcast, lexolent.com or Lexolent on LinkedIn. Please do follow us, check out what we're doing. We have now been posting a number of these podcasts. We've had some fantastic feedback from the market, educating the market about litigation funding and talking to some very interesting and experienced people around the world. Now, today, we are talking to Jerry Giles at WTT. Jerry is a very experienced UK-based tax and ancillary services provider and a chartered accountant. And today we're going to be talking about how that part of the world fits into the litigation funding world. So Jerry, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Good, good. Always. And you're in the UK, and I'm in Dubai, as I am. And let's do what British people do. How's the weather?
Today, it's really good. It's really sunny and it's quite warm. So we've last few days has been absolutely terrible. So that's the answer.
I've got to say, in Dubai, like yesterday, today, and tomorrow, it's sunny. So we don't really talk about the Dubai weather because it's pretty constant. So Jerry, would you start by maybe telling us a little bit about your professional history and how you've evolved into working with the WTT Group?
Yeah, by all means. So I started training as an accountant in 1993, and I qualified a few years later. So I'm actually a chartered certified as for the record. So ACCA is
the record notes.
Good, well done. And so I trained in a London firm. I then did the classic move back to a regional firm, where I ended up becoming a tax partner in what was a chartered accountancy firm, chartered tax advisors, registered auditors. So fairly classic upbringing in that sense. And then in 2006-07, I decided to set up my own consultancy practice. It's going to be a temporary position while my kids were growing up and young. My wife was working in hospital, so I was going to be the working for myself more at home than not. And then that lasted until beginning of this year. Throughout that 20 odd years, about 18 years to be fair, I've dealt with private clients, small corporates, and a lot of family issues, tax matters, and also dealing with people who were resident non-doms, people who are becoming non-resident but keeping assets here. So a real mixed bag of old school private client work. Stayed well clear of tax schemes and arrangements, which was something that a lot of my colleagues didn't do and other firms didn't do, and there's a lot of fallout from that.
Well, there's a lot of fallout that is asking for funding, interestingly, but maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Well, yes, WTT Group have grown up dealing with tax litigation and tax funding cases or dealing with cases that need funding. So, yeah, one of the reasons for joining Lexolent in the first place was to help with that. But WTT Group approached me. I know the MD and one of the other founders. They wanted to enlarge their offering, and they decided that they would like to buy my practice. So as of the beginning of this year, I come in as part of the WTT team, and I'm on the payroll, and I'm head of a few bits and bobs and departments. And I must say it's great to be back in the city after many years of not being here. So
I could imagine it's refreshing. And also, I'm talking to an entrepreneur who has had an exit. You realize there's not very many of you around in the professional services space. You became an entrepreneur, you built a business, and you exited. So please write that book when you have time, because there's not many of you. Most of us become entrepreneurs and then keep on looking for the exit, and the exit keeps on moving further and further away. So yeah,
I'm one of these people that's sort of you give people advice for a lot of 30 plus years, and then you look back at your own, you sort of turn the spotlight back on yourself, and you go, do you know what? I haven't actually taken any of that advice myself. I ran effectively a one-man private practice. You build up a 30-year network of clients and introducers and contacts and other professional colleagues, and then what happens? You just retire, and it all just fades away, or you think, well, actually, I might as well sell this into something else. And yeah, obviously, because of the nature of the relationship between my business and me, i.e., it's me.
You're one and the same, yeah.
You're going to expect at least 2-year lock-in on you know.
Well, don't they say that we optimize all the hard work in our our 50s, because that's when all of everybody who we classified as no hopers in our 20s, which included me. I classified myself as that. We're all now seasoned professionals that very important organizations have given dangerously important jobs to, and we can all now give each other work and opportunities. So I think you and I have worked very hard over the years. So let's give ourselves some credit.
Yeah, it's a fair point. I think a lot of people sort of spend their lives in a bigger firm, perhaps a professional firm, you know, big accountancy firm, big law firm, and end up then going on their own and wondering why they didn't do it earlier. I've kind of done the reverse. I went early to look myself.
What the hell have I done?
Yeah, well, I'm now back into the city swing of it. But WTTs are quite an unusual.
Yeah, let's talk about WTT because I do understand it's multifaceted. That's very interesting from where I sit, because funding is relevant to cases that impinge upon the finance world, obviously general legals, tax. You know, it's kind of got it's got a number of elements to it. So yeah, tell me what the different strands of WTT do.
So WTT is 3 companies with a group company on top, so classic group structure. But WTT Group is a regulated, SRA regulated law firm. So primarily we are a law firm, but it also has a tax consulting company and an accountancy practice. And that's sort of that's pretty much what I brought to the table back March 2023. So to complete their puzzle, they had legal and tax consulting, whereas actually the consulting is more the litigation side, dealing with tax cases and a lot of schemes that have gone wrong, people involved caught up in the loan charge, which listeners may well be aware of, was the first real attempt by any government in this country to introduce a retrospective tax charge, and they've gone back. They went back 20 years and then scaled that back to 10 years.
Can we just spend a couple of minutes talking about that? Because so obviously there was a whole ream of providers who advised individuals, wealthy individuals or otherwise, to invest in certain schemes, and those schemes on the face of it seem to allow them to defer, defray or avoid tax. HMRC has come back, circled back afterwards and decided that wasn't the case, and have actually come back to the individuals to pay the tax gap. So therefore, those individuals now feel as if they have claims to make against those advisors, those scheme providers. Is that in a nutshell?
There's a mixed, there's a real sort of broad spread of this. Yes, there are certainly the high net worths who were encouraged or recommended. I wouldn't go as far as say advised, because there seems to be little advice, technical advice actually given on these things as far as the user. Of the scheme is
a lot of celebrities. I saw a lot of celebrity names. They got roped up into these sort of things, didn't they?
There's, anybody you can, I won't mention names, but famous boy bands.
Let's keep this agnostic.
Football managers, national coaches, international. It's endless, and it's all.
I just like to make it clear that there are very many football managers who were not involved in tax schemes.
Absolutely. Other managers are available. Yeah. But there's a real sort of mixed bag of people that were effectively employees who were put in, and we're not talking about wealthy and famous people. These are just run-of-the-mill contractors, people working in the NHS, locum doctors, locum cleaners. It's huge.
Yeah. And
the revenue have always had what we call powers of discovery. They can go back with the right set of facts 20 years in any circumstance. So any taxpayer who's been deliberately negligent or criminal potentially in their conduct, there's a 20-year look back. That's always been there, but that's not retrospective taxation. That's digging back into the past and fixing errors, apparently.
Right.
The retrospective point is where they passed in 2017, but effective 2019, 6th of April, a 10-year wrap up. They said, right, if you've got loans outstanding from trusts at this date for the previous 10 years, you're now paying tax in this year on the whole lot.
Wow.
And that has caused significant stress in certain sectors of our client base, because we are WTT Group have been sort of, I suppose, the market leader as the non-Magic Circle law firm dealing with this type of tax trouble and litigation. And we've formed some action groups, group litigation groups.
Oh, yeah.
There's a few JRs been going on, and all of these things are expensive. Someone's got to pay for them, and often, litigation funding has been.
Good segue, Jerry. Great segue, because my next question, of course, is how does an organization like WTT look to funding, and how would they envisage being part of the Lexolent network? Now, the Lexolent network comprises the marketplace where funders and law firms and intermediaries and insolvency practitioners and experts join in order to promote their set of skills. And then that's married with the investors who join the platform. Lexolent has its own fund, and it looks at opportunities itself, and it then offers those opportunities on a secondary basis, agnostically to the entire market. So people can come in and look at them and take a syndication of those behind Lexolent. Or if Lexolent doesn't look at those cases, not because they're bad cases, but because they don't fit Lexolent's fairly finite scope of interest, which is, generally speaking, English speaking, preferably common law in a jurisdiction that we're familiar with, then we will pass on it. We'll place it on the platform, and other funders can look at it. And there are funders who love Central European corrugated cardboard cartel cases, and these exist. You wouldn't believe the type of cases that exist. Or they may love opiate cases in the US, or they may use big pharma cases in the US. That's not our sweet spot, but these are all being placed on the platform. So that's what we do. So in terms of how WTT look to funders, I'd just be interested to understand a little bit more about that.
So we've got to sort of decide who the case is going to be against. And at the moment, a lot of the cases, it's sort of against HMRC. We are taking HMRC to task on interpretation of statute and difference of opinion in what the words mean, and whether they've got the right to tax and double tax the taxpayer. So the funding on that is normally it's the taxpayer funding it themselves. They have to. The appetite to invest in an attack against our government, effectively, our government agency, is a difficult sell.
I would think so, and that's where I'm going with this. It's a more difficult decision than otherwise for a funder, for example.
It is, but then if we look at some of the other work that we deal with, and we touched on it earlier, some of the high net worth individuals who feel that they have been missold or badly advised, or perhaps worse still, no advice when they thought there was advice. They are going after the promoter, the person, the introducer, and that could be, well, sadly, a lot of the introducers recommending these schemes in the past have been fellow professional accountants, lawyers, tax advisors.
And Big Four, were they part of this program?
Yeah, they're designing, creating, and selling their own schemes as well as others. So it's endemic. Sadly, it was when I was I started in 1993, and by the end of the 90s, there was a concerted sort of effort by the tax industry, if you like, or the tax avoidance industry, as Revenue refer to it, to just productize and mass market tax deferral or tax elimination schemes. And a classic example would be, we've got this thing, we've got council's opinion on it, it works, the following reasons, sign up and it'll save you loads of money. And sadly, the tax analysis may or may not have been right at the time, but the revenue have disagreed with it and then challenged it.
Yeah.
Of course, the council's opinion was given to the promoter, not to the user, and the users are trying to rely on the council's opinion. Of course, there's no direct liability. The council is not liable to the user because the user didn't go to council to get an opinion.
They went to a third-party provider.
So you've got a third-party opinion that was given effectively to a third party, and therefore we can't rely on it, and therefore then they're exposed to the full force of HMRC. So, but taking claims against other professional firms is something that again funding would help, and
it has its sensitivities, and I certainly think that funding has less hesitancy in doing that because it's fairly prevalent for professional negligence claims. So that I understand would be a quite a well-funded stream of work.
Yes, sadly though, when it comes to promoters who maybe, I think one of the issues in this country is that anybody can call themselves an accountant, anybody can call themselves a lawyer, and anybody can call themselves a tax advisor. Nobody has to be regulated. Nobody has to carry PI, professional indemnity insurance.
Right. Yeah.
And for the public, man on the street or the man on a Clapham omnibus, as it gets referred to.
Good reference for the lawyers out there. Yeah.
The lawyers, that one. They don't know the difference.
No.
My tax advisor said I could do this. Yeah. What sort of tax advisor was that?
Yeah.
And we find that they're not regulated. But what has also come to light is that the professional regulators, I won't name any in particular for obvious reasons, don't seem to have, they're a bit toothless when it comes to dealing with their members who have been caught up in selling, promoting, maybe not devising, but certainly selling, promoting these sorts of schemes. And it's we WTT Legal are certainly picking up a lot of work from that point, from that as a fallout of that. And WTT Tax Consulting are staffed and headed up by a lot of ex-HMRC people who
that's interesting, because I am aware of professional services in Big Four, but in the boutique space, and there is a lot of, in the same way as America, ex-prosecutors and public defenders will then take their experience to a big law in Washington or New York and transfer that experience for a lot of money, I guess. ex-HMRC inspectors and investigators will do the same and go private client side.
They will, and they often end up in the big firms, not far from where we're sat. But some of them like to come to sort of a more, I say, boutique. We're about 20 strong in a single office. We are in the City of London, but we are small and.
And that gives you flexibility. I know that in my world, I'm boutique, but I have amazing relationships with law firms around the world who like to work with me and use me because I'm conflict free. I'm not part of a big organization.
Well, we are independent. I mean, we're independent and independent minded, and we're also, we're a friendly, close team, which is when you're dealing with sort of difficult subject matter. We've had suicides amongst our client base because of
that's tough
pressure. So you have to look after your staff, look after your team members, and it's it's not pleasant. But we do other work, which is the sort of my area, which I'm heading up, which is tax advice, which is effectively looking the other way. Most of what we've talked about so far has been looking backwards and dealing with past events. But families, once they get themselves the right way up from dealing with those past events, then need some proper advice going forward on how to stay compliant, do something sensible with their assets, their family wealth, and not get caught again by understanding that they are now being advised by people who are regulated, insured, and are not flogging
on brokering or intermediary. We've had some similar stories in the Middle East where intermediaries were selling a very finite product line of fixed income schemes, quasi pensions, and they were just basically financial products. And some of the fees that it's now come out into the open, some of the fees paid to those intermediaries by the insurance and product providers, eye-watering. First 12 months premiums paid to the intermediaries. It was incredible. And interestingly, my understanding is that there are a number of professional services people, non-lawyers, who are building books of cases. And these cases will be brought in the UK, and it will be on the basis that the product providers are, to use a legal term, on the hook. Because they facilitated the intermediaries, because there's no point individuals going against the intermediaries, because those intermediaries have shut their doors, zipped up their bags and gone on holiday. So that's interesting. I'm aware of that's happening. Of course, where I sit in Dubai and in the Middle East, there are many expatriates who were sold these types of products because it was basically the only products that were available in the market. So, and again, they weren't advised per se. They didn't pay for independent advice. They were sold with what they thought was advice, but that's a different story. It wasn't advice. It was a sales pitch.
No, and this is, I mean, I spend a lot of my time trying to politely educate even fellow professionals the difference between what is advice, what is formal professional advice. And most people just think, well, just a quick chat with someone on a golf course or at a bar, at a wine. It's not advice. Formal advice is a process, and it's got to be independent.
Yeah.
And a lot of these, we've got counsel's opinion from such and such a set of chambers, and that's good enough for me. You think, no, each individual taxpayer, and it's boring. And my family said boring and annoying, a bit like me when I talk about tax at home at the dinner table.
What taxes is a very relevant subject, and it's people in our world, certainly in my sort of boutique law firm world, and living in Dubai, we have many people who have done very well. They've done very well, and they need to look at global taxation through a magnifying glass, because it's very, very relevant to what they do. And sometimes it's like anything, it's a nuisance. So they don't want to deal with it because they don't want to deal with any bad news or any adjustment to their life, but they absolutely have to.
Yeah, I mean, we use the expression of taking the pain away, and it's either pain that's been there a long time, but like a bad tooth that people just ignored until it gets too painful. But if we can get in early, and this is the educational piece, get in early, advise, formal advice early on, and set out a plan and then follow it, and obviously adapt it as required, changes in legislation, changing family circumstances, or even if it's a business, changing the business environment. At least you're trying your best to stay compliant and not fall foul of HMRC, who are becoming extremely powerful. We get a lot of inquiries now, actually, from your neck of the woods, people who have gone from the UK, and then it suddenly dawned on them that they've actually left assets behind, and they don't quite understand what that means. And so we get asked, well, can you help this guy, this family? And flipping that round, people who are non-UK resident, non-UK domiciled, and never intend to be here, are investing in assets here, are unclear or unaware that there's a tax exposure for doing that.
No, it's
we're helping that not let that pain fester or even arise. Hopefully,
there's a lot of very high net worth people who they're not from the UK. They never have been from the UK, but they love London, and they buy quite large assets, and they have no idea that there's tax attached to those assets in various ways. So
yeah, I mean, the biggest play is the inheritance tax exposure it brings about, which is the last of the taxes.
They don't know about such things. They don't know about. So how did you? So let's circle back to Lexolent, and we'll wrap things up in a minute. So how did you come across Lexolent initially, Jerry?
So I was called one day. It was actually just after the sale into WTT here. One of my very old clients. I was doing a bit of sort of introducing my old network of clients to WTT and to the leadership team here. And one of my good friends, Mr. Nick Wood of Audley Capital.
Nick is a member of Lexolent, yes.
Absolutely. He rang, he said, here, Jerry, he said, you like a bit of litigation and a bit of a punch up, don't you, with your work? I said, yes. I was wondering where he's going with this. He said, you need to come and meet some friends of mine and see what they've got to say, because I think it might fit nicely in what you're trying to build at WTT.
I think Nick was right. I think Nick was right. There are huge synergies in what Lexolent does and what Lexolent will do much more of going forwards, and what you're doing as well. So it's very interesting. And in terms of the WTT growth strategy, is funding going to be, given individual circumstances, is funding going to continue to be a large part of that?
I think it's definitely going to be, we talk about building we're a multidisciplinary practice. Someone said, in fact, this morning, a call I was on before this one, said that we've got a big hand. And I thought, I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. So I was explaining. He said, well, you said all in one place, you cover the legal, the tax, and the accounting piece.
It's attractive to private clients. It's attractive to people who like to have a single point of contact who is solutions driven. It certainly is attractive.
Yeah, and we talk about having, our toolbox is, in fact, we've got 3 of them. We have to carry around 3 toolboxes, which is the legal, tax, and accounting piece. But somebody else we were talking to the other day said, people don't want to go to the big. Not everybody wants to go. It's not right for the big firms. But you can find this multidisciplinary or integrated approach.
Yeah,
he said, it's not that common in a boutique practice. You're either one thing or the other.
No, I agree. I haven't come across it myself with the three parts of the armory. So this is, it's very useful for me to know for clients who need a bit of a one-stop shop in the UK. So
yeah,
it's very,
and
very useful.
that sums it up nicely. We're a one-stop shop in the city, and we're reasonably priced at that.
Reasonably is a good word. I don't use any of the C words, actually. One of them
I only use the compliance word. That's C.
There you go. There you go. None of the other ones. Well, I don't even use that. Listen, Jerry, it's been great. Let's wrap it up there. We've had a really good chat, and it's been really good to learn about WTT and yourself. We hope that you keep on engaging with Lexolent. We hope that we continue to work with you in the UK in various parts of the interesting workload that you do. So I'll just wrap this up. So again, follow us on LinkedIn at Lexolent, Lexolent, and our website is lexolent.com. So Jerry, please do enjoy the rest of your day in the UK, and thanks again. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Lovely to see you. Thanks a lot.